Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of Stupid Gun Myths. I am Mike B, coming at you still from Mommy's basement, faithfully as always. And today we're going to be talking about a myth that I've been wanting to cover for a while, just never got around to it, so today is the day. This is going to be the old trope of, oh, I wouldn't touch that old gun, that'll blow up in your face. And I've heard this more times than I probably would have cared to have heard it already in my my life's about a third of the way over, and I've already heard it more times than somebody should probably hear in 5 lifetimes. So it's really, really dumb. It's a really ignorant statement. A lot of FUDs say it, but also a lot of tactical, tactards say this too. So it's not just one specific group of people. And like with any myth, there is some element of truth to it, but it got blown out of proportion. And it used to work to my advantage and other collectors' advantages, where we could get antique firearms for really cheap because everybody thought they were just ticking time bombs that were going to blow up in your face. Well, if you know what you're doing and you educate yourself and you're extremely safe with your loading and your ammunition choice, it just proves to be not true. It's interesting because people just blindly say shit like that, but they don't understand that even though I'm not a metallurgist, I do know that steel doesn't just randomly deteriorate and become brittle after, only 150 years, of existing. Yes, it can react with oxygen, and it can, there could be slightly less material than you started with over years of oxidization if they're not stored properly, but hey, it's not going to be enough to just drastically reduce the safety and the mass, unless it was sitting in a saltwater rust puddle and it was exposed to air every day, and then salt water and it rotted away. You know what I mean? Like, metal doesn't just randomly deteriorate, especially steel. So why would guns blow up? Why would old guns blow up then, if you don't believe that hyperbolic bullshit about the steel deteriorating, being weak and all that stuff, and them not knowing how to heat treat it, which is also hyperbolic bullshit? People think that, we just became enlightened and we became, master gunsmith and metallurgists about 80 years ago during the First World War, or about 100 years ago, but during the First World War and then in World War II. Before that, the Industrial Revolution, metallurgy has been a thing for quite a long time now, people, and in the late 19th century, they actually had it down pretty well. Even to modern standards, it's not terrible. So, at that point, they had firearms especially figured out and how to be safe, because obviously if you market an unsafe firearm, it's not going to be popular for very long. You have some problems with that, and you're going to not make money, which you need to survive. So, kind of using that basic logic, which is totally anecdotal, but it's just kind of, deductive reasoning and thinking logically. Let's get into the actual kind of reason I have these firearms out here right now. So I've got on top the Martini Henry Mark II, which is a black powder metallic cartridge fed firearm. This is the Lebel 1886-93 French smokeless powder, small caliber, comparatively speaking to this, so it's an 8mm. First smokeless powder centerfire rifle ever adopted by any nation's military. And then down here I've got the Swiss model 1889 Schmidt-Rubin repeating rifle. Now, these are all late 19th century antiques. They do not require an FFL or anything, as long as it's legal to own in your area, to purchase. And the ammunition can be very difficult. You usually have to load your own. This one I have to actually make out of another piece of brass and then cast my own bullets, etc., etc. This ammo you can still buy, but it's better if you can reload. And this you have to reload for because of a pressure issue that I'm going to be talking about. So, to boil it, break it down rather, and just put it in an extreme nutshell, extremely simplified, non-scientific, but just if you have no experience with the difference between black powder and smokeless powder. Black powder, when ignited, explodes. It's a very fast, rapid reaction. It explodes. It's a flash. It's really cool. There's a lot of smoke. But the explosion creates not that much pressure, but quite a bit enough pressure to get a lead projectile or soft metal projectile to leave the end of the muzzle at a relatively high velocity. Smokeless powder, if you want to kind of compare it to black powder, when ignited, it's not going to be comparable at all because it burns at a very hot and rapid pace. It does not explode. What the explosion is from smokeless powder is the massive amount of pressure from that heat building up in the chamber and the barrel behind the bullet, creating a seal, and giving the smaller caliber, most likely jacketed projectile a much higher velocity than you would get out of a black powder firearm shooting a larger caliber, heavier weight, mostly soft lead projectile. So with that in mind, you're looking at about 10 to 15 times the amount of pressure on average. That's just, again, that's anecdotal, of a smokeless cartridge versus a black powder cartridge, although the black powder cartridge is going to be bigger. And here's where we run into problems and where I think the myth started from. This one, in this Martini Henry, my standard load is I use a 500 grain bullet and 100 grains of double F, either GoX or black powder. That is not me giving you advice. That is what I use from a load data sheet that was deemed safe. I forgot the source. I'm not giving you reloading advice. That is what I use. I'm using this as an example. There we go, legal disclaimer. So I use 100 grains of black powder. That is a decent amount of powder, but not for black powder. That's a pretty standard amount if you're talking, you know, whatever. Now, when you're talking smokeless powder, I use 41 or 43 grains of a smokeless powder in the 8mm Lebel to load that cartridge. That's a significant difference. Now, the properties of black powder and smokeless powder are very different. Black powder is very coarsely ground, and it's got a lot of air that goes in between the granules. Smokeless powder is more fine. It's not as coarse at all. It's very fine, it's more smooth, and it can have dead space in the cartridge, whereas black powder is required to be packed down as much as possible so you get that reaction as contained as possible, and there cannot be dead space in a metallic cartridge rifle. So, with that, what I think has happened in the past, and what I know has happened actually because people have said, in a black powder firearm such as this, or even a rifled musket, one of those little pistols you get, that single shot pistols, or even the black powder revolver, reproduction or original, people that are not really familiar with being safe or wanting to be safe or familiar with firearms go to the gun store and they see smokeless powder for reloading, you know, metallic cartridges in a modern firearm that are made for that kind of pressure, and they say, oh, that powder is cheaper than this black powder stuff, or I can't find black powder, so I'm just going to use this, and I'm going to put 100 grains of smokeless powder in this cartridge because I can use 100 grains of black powder, right? Well, if you notice the difference that I just said, these are two totally different cartridges. 100 grains of black powder, 43 grains of smokeless powder. Even just that is extremely significant in the difference. If you put 100 grains of black powder in this cartridge, A, it wouldn't fit in the cartridge. B, or I'm sorry, 100 grains of smokeless powder, it would blow this rifle up because the pressure is not, or the pressure is exceeding what the rifle's actually rated for. Now, if you consider that as a smokeless rifle that's made to handle that higher pressure, what do you think it's going to do to this black powder rifle or pistol that's not rated for that amount of pressure? So, yes, if you put 100 grains of smokeless powder, I don't care what kind it is, generally speaking, in this rifle, in this cartridge, and you fire it, you are going to have a catastrophic failure. It's like loading, say your tire pressure is supposed to be 18 pounds per square inch, or whatever the hell it's supposed to be, and you just decide, well, I kind of want to have harder tires, so I'm going to load this bitch up to 75 pounds per square inch. It's going to pop at some point before you even get to 75. So you can imagine when you do all that at once, it's going to be a catastrophic failure. Now, that myth stems from people being morons, which 90% of myths do, or just being completely willfully, blissfully ignorant and stupid. And also with that, so this metallurgy thing about it's just going to blow up. Okay, this is an old gun. This is from, I think, 1891 it dated to. This is from 1890 something, and then this is from 1875. This receiver, the way it's designed, not particularly from the metallurgy standpoint, it's Swiss. They understood that stuff. They're really good engineers. They're really good craftsmen. But from the way this rifle is designed, it is not designed to take the higher pressure of the later Gewehrpatronen 11 round, which we are all familiar with. But the GP90, which is what this is, you know, supposed to be used for, has a much lower pressure and a much smaller load with a smokeless powder cartridge. So you can also get into trouble using a smokeless powder rifle like this or this that is not, or even a US Craig Jorgensen rifle, 1896. They're not super strong actions. They're not designed for this high pressure. They're designed to be rated above a little bit what the normal pressure for their standard load was, just as a safety precaution for if factory loaded ammo gets loaded, you know, given to soldiers. It can handle a few shots, but repeated use from these higher pressure cartridges that'll actually fit in here, or a higher load, is going to weaken the action, and you can have a catastrophic failure from that too. So it's a lot of just really dumb people who think they know what they're doing and don't take the time, effort, or precautions to be safe when it comes to reloading or putting certain ammo through a certain firearm that shouldn't be. Again, it goes back to the point I've made a lot on this video. Use the ammo that is deemed safe from a credible source in your firearm. Don't just assume, don't just guess, don't just listen to Bubba, you know, oh yeah, I did this, you know, I loaded 100 grains of 48 IMR 4895 in this musket, and it works great. It's a loud son bitch, but hey, that son bitch, man, that dropped me that dang hog, you know, the other day, and I've still been eating on that son bitch, you know. That kind of Bubba shit, that's what gets people hurt and killed and starts these kind of myths. Again, it's not a total myth, but just to say a blanket statement of these old guns are just going to blow up when you shoot them. I've shot the shit out of this thing with loads that are made and designed, you know, for this action and for this rifle, and I've never had a problem, never even come close. No sticky bolt, no signs of a catastrophic failure. Going to be shooting this, just going to load some lighter loads, because this will, again, not giving you legal advice or anything like that, this will handle GP11 for a certain round count, and I don't want to test that out, so I'm never going to use GP11 in here. This, I'm going to stick with black powder, not even going to mess around with the smokeless powder rounds that some people make. This was designed for black powder. It was, you know, made to shoot it. That's what it's going to take. So I hope I kind of, you know, shed some light on that stupid myth that you probably have heard before. And now that people are realizing that there's so much more load data on the internet that's safe and whatever from a credible source and all that stuff, and people are sharing their recipes that actually have been doing it for many years and they've been doing it correctly, and they give up evidence why and how it works, the rates that I've heard of and seen of catastrophic failures have dropped significantly, which is good. But again, still be cautious of this stuff. Firearms are not safe if you're dumb. They're just not, all right? That's just the way it is. Firearms are not safe if you're dumb. So if you have an inkling that you might be dumb, maybe don't mess around with firearms until somebody smarter comes around and is willing to do the research and be safe. So, all right. That's all I've got. This one got a little bit long-winded, but it's valuable information for you. So let me know if you learned something on here, or if you've heard this trope before, or other dumb, stupid myths that you've heard, and who knows, maybe I'll make a video and give you some credit for it. So, if you like this video and you like all my other content, stupid gun myths, all the other series, World War I series, shooting series, ballistic tests, you name it, you can actually support the channel financially by becoming a Patreon supporter or a channel member, who are the sponsors of my videos, not some corporate sponsorship, or, you know, shilling some product that I maybe 50% endorse, but they're paying me. Nope. Crowdfunding and self-funding is where I want to stay on the channel, and so far it's been really cool to allow me to make really cool videos on stuff like this. I'm going to be doing a lot of really cool stuff this year because of the amount of support received in the past year. It's going to be fantastic. So if you want to do that, become a Patreon supporter or channel member, $5 a month or more on either platform. Gets into my Discord server, which is really fun. There's a lot of people on there, a lot of cool information, etc., etc. And if you can't support the channel financially, I totally understand that. That's fine. You can support me by doing the usual stuff that YouTube likes, liking this video, subscribing to my channel, and sharing this video out. That is probably the best way if you found this entertaining and also informative. So, that being said, I appreciate you all watching, and we'll see you on the next episode of Stupid Gun Myths. Fuckity bye.